you so much for the introduction. Hi, everybody. Very happy. I'm very happy to be here today. Greetings from El Paso, Texas, where we are at about, I think, 102 degrees today. So it's super hot. Um, but I'm very thankful to be here. Thank you, Alexis. Thank you, Tequeria team, for having me today. What I'm displaying here on the slides, if you can confirm that you can see them, I believe you can, but just shoot me a yes on the chat. I'm sharing with you the main screen, the first screen of an article that the New York Times came up with actually just a couple of days ago, where they interviewed, I think, 30 millennials asking about their money issues and how some of them, or some of us, some of them are struggling, some of them are doing really good. And really the way they're summarizing this is we aren't asking for the moon. We just want the stability. We just want to feel better about our money. People have fears. There's noise about inflation, the stock market going down, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, excuse me, crashing. And just things are stressful out there. So I'm just gonna really quick question before we start. How are you feeling about your finances now, from 1 to 5, where 1 is terrible and 5 is great? I'd like to see in the chat, if you have a minute, how are you feeling about your finances in general, from 1 to 5? 5 fantastic, 1 horrible. Seeing some 3s, 4. Stephanie 6, 4, 1. Crying emoji. Yes. 2, 3 2s. Thank you so much for sharing how you're feeling. You aspire for that? Yeah, 6 would be amazing. Yeah, so thank you so much for sharing it. It's difficult. Talking about money is tough. I don't know about you, but in my house, when I was growing up, we barely ever talked about money. I know things. I was living in Mexico when I was a kid. I'd moved to the US as an adult when I was 23, 23 or 24. I don't remember. But anyway, I was a kid in Mexico, living, I don't want to say in poverty, but certainly with a lot of challenges. I went with my mom to the pawn shop more than once to get money to pay for our school. I rode the bus every day over there. We didn't have a car. We didn't have telephone. One of the main roads leading to my house was a dirt road. Oftentimes we didn't have water at home, so there was this huge water truck coming in and just filling. We call them tambos. I don't know the word in the US, but these huge plastic containers. The truck came to each house, and they filled these huge water containers for us to use. Anyway, so it was interesting. It was challenging when I was growing up. It was fun also, but it was very challenging. So today, what we're talking about is really the second part of the goals workshop that I gave last month. If you haven't had a chance, I highly encourage you to connect, to see it. Tequeria already uploaded it to your YouTube channel, to your YouTube channel. So please take some time to watch it. It will set the foundation for our discussion today. A little bit about me. As I said, I was born in Mexico. I've been a CFP since 2004. Since 2014, I became an enroll agent earlier this year. Enroll agent just means that I have the knowledge and experience to read taxes and to represent taxpayers to the IRS. Last month, Investment News honored me on their 9th annual 40 Under 40. I've been a podcaster also since 2014. My podcast is called Dinero en Español. And yes, it's in Spanish. And people seem to really like it. I've been married since 2006. I have 2 kids and 7 pets. 3 Scottish Terriers, 2 rabbits, and 2 guinea pigs. So we have a fun family. It's every Sunday. It's a pain for my kids to clean after their pets, but they do it most of the time. When they don't, I do it for them. So, but it's fun. Yes. 7 pets. Yes, I know. We're a handful. So really quick, our agenda for today. We'll do a quick refresher on our part one, just so we're a little bit on the same page, so that everyone is on the same page. We're going to talk about the goal pyramid and where you may fall. We're going to talk about saving and investing for multiple goals. We're going to talk about the risk pyramid, and then we're just going to put it all together. And then we're going to finish the session with Q&A. Okay, so just really quick, let's just go over a little bit about what we talked last time. So last time, the 4 or 5 messages I gave last time on the part one. Thank you, Alexis, for putting the link on the YouTube video for the first part of this discussion or the last workshop. First thing is the goals are the journey. Really, when you start seeing the goals as the journey instead of seeing as a destination, your mindset around goals changes radically. Because all of a sudden, it's not about accumulating 1 million or 2 million or whatever. It's not about getting there. It's not about starting to enjoy life once you get to that goal. It's about enjoying your life while you get there. And I introduced the concept of value-based goal setting, which really, what I say value-based goal setting, what I mean is setting your goals according to your values. So that means a deep understanding of yourself, of what you are, of who you are, of what is important to you. And then based on that, you determine your goals. Instead of just getting to a random number and thinking that, I want to have $3 million. And then at that time, I'm going to start enjoying life. I'm going to quit my job and then I'm going to leave. Well, no, what if instead of doing that, you say, well, 3 million will be pretty cool. But really what I'm looking at, what I'm after is the ability to travel around the world, for example, or the ability to take care of my parents in Mexico, or the ability to do this, or the ability to do that, because that's what's important to me. So that's when your values help you define your goals, you are actually happier to achieve them because that's what's important to you. And then we talked about Simon Sinek's Golden Circle. If you haven't watched his TED talk or read his book, essentially his message is to start with why. Why do you want to do this? What it is, why is that important to you? Why is that important to you? So once you have that clarity, once you start with why, then you go with how, and then you end with what. So it's always about your life. Then what are you going to do about your life? And then how are you going to do to achieve those goals? And then I also introduced the concept of the micro goals, which is, well, instead of striving for the 5 million or the 3 million or whatever number, how can you break that goal in small parts so that it's easier for you to visualize, it's easier for you to track your progress and to make sure that you're getting where you want to get. All right, so those are the 4 basic ideas, the 4 major ideas we discussed on the last workshop. So now, as of today, let's talk a little bit about the goal pyramid. So this is very interesting because when you are starting out in your career, when you're starting to make money or starting to make more money than before, what tends to happen is people start to focus on the short term, on the immediate needs. And this is actually a discussion that one of my mentors gave me. This is one of the talks that he gave me when I was starting out in this career, is that he told me, well, you should pay attention to people and how far away they're planning, how far away their goals are. So when someone, for example, someone is in survival mode, someone is barely making it, their goals or their vision, their life is going to be centered about their next meal. Where is their next meal going to come from? When is their next money to be able to buy the ticket for the bus? Or where is the next gas money going to come from? those very, very immediate needs that a lot of people take for granted. But for people that are really starting out in survival mode, that's their life. They cannot even begin to comprehend talking about retirement because they're worried about their next meal. If you start talking about retirement with a person like that, they're just gonna tell you to go to hell because they don't visualize that. That's not important to them. How can you tell them to think about retirement when they're worried about their next meal? So once you're past that, then you start thinking about where you're gonna go eat on the weekend. What are you gonna do on Saturday? What club are you gonna go on Saturday or on Friday night? Once you're past that, once you start making more money, once your income starts to grow, then your immediate worry is where you're gonna go on vacation, right? Because you don't worry about money anymore. You don't worry about the club. Now you're worrying about vacation, and vacations are expensive. So you start to focus on how you're gonna get money to go to your next vacation, which is maybe in the next 6 months or maybe within the next year. Once you go past that, then you start thinking about, well, maybe I can start saving for a down payment for a house, or maybe I start saving for a car, or maybe I start sending money to my family, or you start thinking about things that are farther away. So here, what I'm trying to show here is when you're starting out in your career, your focus is probably going to be in the short-term goals. Your next vacation, your midterm goals, your car, your first home. How are you going to do? And that's where the majority of your savings are going to go to. And then that's totally fine that when you're starting out in your career, you may only put away, let's say, $25 for your retirement or $50 for your retirement, because you see it just so far away. And your concern is more about the now. You want to buy a bike, you want to go to a race, you want to do something in the short term. So that's where the majority of your money goes to, towards your short-term goals. And then a little bit of to your midterm goals, and even less to your long-term goals. But what happens once your career is progressing, you're making more money than before, your short-term goals are covered by cash flow, then you devote less money to your short-term goals, simply because you're making more money. You may not even have short-term goals just because you're making so much money that you pay it off your cash flow. But then you start to save more for your midterm goals, like your first house or your second house or your kids' college, for example. And then the bulk of your savings go towards the long term. So these are people that are starting to put away $20,000 per year on their retirement, and and that's not enough for them. So they open brokerage accounts and start investing more there. So the next question for everyone today is, where are you on the goal pyramid? Is your life more like the pyramid here's the question. If you could take a look at the poll, where's your focus right now? Are you focused more on the long term? Are you focused more on the short term? Are you focused more on the long term? And again, there's no right or wrong questions. It's really where you are in your life right now, what type of income you're making right now, what are you focusing on? Okay. Thank you so much for answering. Most everyone here is focused more on the long term. That's great. So you should be looking at the results. Most everyone is just focusing on the long term, goals, probably because the short-term goals are already taken care of. They're no longer a concern. Midterm goals, same thing. So really just focus on what happens going forward. So as I was saying before, maybe I just skip this one. If you're starting out, maybe the majority of your savings go to your emergency fund and your vacation. And you're just putting a little bit. Can I say all of the above? Of course you can. And then you put relatively less for your retirement, because you're concerned more about funding things for the right now. And that's totally fine, because that's and ironically, this is where most financial planners or most financial gurus will tell you, when you're younger, you should save more for retirement. Well, yes, obviously, but we don't, because we don't care about retirement when we're 20. We don't care about retirement when we're 25. We want the next vacation. We want our first car. We want our first house, etc. Even though mathematically it makes more sense that you save more for retirement, but how do you balance what the things you want now versus things you want in the future? And for younger people, that's harder to do. So that's why we tend to focus on the short term. And even so, many people just don't save anything for emergencies, and they just live their life with their current income. And then someone saying here, Pedro, I care about retirement in my 20s, but these student loans, they don't know how to go down. That's right. Then we have the student loans. Who knows what's going to happen with them? Who knows? I feel you. I know what you mean, and you're absolutely right. They're there, and right now there's a big question mark next to them. So we'll see what happens about them. And yeah, a lot of people pretend that they're not there. Yeah. Thank you, Mario, also for your comment. So just as another example, again, I'm not saying do this or not. This is an example of someone that's already in their mid-career, or probably later, already making good money. They put a 15,000 a year for the kids' education, 20,000 a year for retirement, and they have a long-term care insurance policy where they put $5,000 a year, just as an example. So they tend not to worry so much about the short term, because they can either cover it with cash flow, or they already have sufficient emergency fund to not worry about it. As opposed to someone younger, someone with less income, someone starting out, their focus is on the emergency fund, building that first $1,000, building that first 2,000 or 3,000 to have those kinds of reserves, and then their vacation, then a little bit on return. So very important here, there's no right or wrong approach. What is there's planned and there's unplanned. Okay, and I want you to remember these. So if I ask you, how are you approaching your finances? In a planned way or in an unplanned way? If you're doing it in an unplanned way, well, maybe it's time to start planning. Maybe it's time to do some thinking about how you're going to structure your finances going forward. And you're planning already, great for you. Keep doing what you're doing. All right. So people often say, well, what if I want to do multiple things? What do I want to do? What do I want to achieve multiple goals? How do I do that? Well, this is where when you start looking at the multi-account approach. So you open multiple accounts to do multiple goals. In the industry, we call this bucketing. So you create a bucket for each of your goals, depending on what it is that you're trying to achieve. And then there's a comment here, like treading water in the middle of the ocean, just trying to keep my head above water and not drown, but also thinking about the creatures that underneath that may eat me. Rent, credit card, inflation, stable job markets. Yeah, it's tough, Pedro, but it's certainly more effective when you have a plan around what you're doing with your money. So I hear you, I feel you, I know what you mean. Now, confession time. For many, many years, I had my finances in a very unstructured, very unplanned way. Even me in this industry, doing what I do for a living, I was doing the complete opposite of what I tell people to do. And it was rough, and it was stressful, and it almost caused me a divorce. So if I went through this, knowing what I knew at the time, granted, I knew much less than what I know now, but still, I was in the industry advising people about their money, and I wasn't doing it myself. So it's rough, but it can be done. Okay, so multi-account approach. Ramit said he talks about this on his book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, which I highly recommend it to you. I highly recommend you the I Will Teach You to Be Rich book by Ramit Sethi. He talks about this kind of stuff, and he explains it very clearly. So what do you do? So this bucketing account, this bucketing system is you open multiple, you're welcome, I'm happy to share this with you guys. So you open multiple saving accounts, thanks to competition, thanks to regulation, making things easier for banks. So you can open multiple bank accounts with no fees at the same institution. One of them is Capital One, but there are many places where you can open these types of accounts. So what you do is you automate, so that right after your paycheck, say you want to save to buy a bike, you want to go on vacation, and you want to build your emergency fund, for example. So you open 3 accounts. And then right after your paycheck, or maybe some companies even allow to do savings straight from the paycheck as a payroll deduction. So you go with HR and you tell them, I want to send these to this place. So they do it for you. And this is extremely effective because it's money you don't see. So all of a sudden your savings become like paying an extra bill. It's paid automatically. It's money you don't see. It's money you don't even get to spend. So you're building your savings automatically. So those are saving accounts in a bank. No, saving accounts does not hurt your credit in any way. If they were credit accounts, they may hurt your credit, but these are savings accounts, so no, they don't have any impact on your credit. If you're not used to do these kind of things, if you've never done this, just be very mindful. You have to be very clear about your expenses so that you don't overdraft your account by trying to save. You have money, but you have it in the savings account. So you come to a risk of overdrafting your account if you're not mindful, if you don't pay attention. And then, of course, take advantage of company benefits for long-term goals like your 401k, your health savings account. Those are for long-term, but you definitely need to use them. And then if that's not enough for you, then you can open brokerage accounts for your own, for additional investing. If you're already doing the maximum contribution, or if you're not so concerned about retirement and you want to invest in some other vehicles that don't have the limitations that 401k that the 401k accounts has, maybe you open a brokerage account. Many institutions offer brokerage accounts at no cost. Fidelity, Schwab, TD Ameritrade, Vanguard. You can open accounts at no cost and pretty much very small fees. So you can open an account there and start investing. And then, of course, I already said it, but set up automatic contributions. Money you don't see is money you don't spend, and it's money that allows you to build wealth. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about risk. So risk is depending on the investment. There's many types of investments. There are different types of risk. Can you explain what the difference is between the 401k and the Roth IRA? Of course, yes. So in a 401k, most employers offer 2 options for employee contributions in the 401k. You have the option to do pre-tax 401k or Roth IRA, which is after tax. And then there's the Roth IRA. So it's another thing. So when you do the benefit of the 401k, of the Roth 401k, is that you can put more money in every year, up to almost $20,000 per year. The Roth IRA, you can only put $6,000. So, but the benefit of the Roth IRA is that you open it at the institution of your choice. You can withdraw money at any time. You have more control over the investments. As in the 401k, you can only invest in what the 401k allows, unless the 401k has what they call a brokerage window. Okay, but I don't recommend to use them anyway. So a Roth IRA has smaller contribution limits. You have more control over how it's invested. And the 401k, you have the option of pre-tax or after tax. The real difference between those two is when you pay the taxes. In a traditional 401k, you pay the taxes when you withdraw the funds from the account. In other words, you get a tax deduction today, you pay less tax today. But when you make the withdrawal, when you make a distribution from the account, you pay taxes on that money. You pay taxes, and if you make the withdrawal before the age of 59 and a half, there's a 10% penalty. So if you leave an employer with a 401k, don't cash out. Don't cash out, because if you do, you'll be heavily, heavily penalized. The alternative, or the better alternative, is to move it to an IRA and continue to invest. So back to the discussion of the risk pyramid. There's different types of investments that have different types of risks. There's stability. When we're talking about stability, is really investments or accounts or vehicles that don't have any, that have very little risk. So when I talk about risk, there are many types of risks. That discussion goes beyond these. Yeah, I'll get back to you a little bit, Walker. So there's many types of risks. Essentially, the risk that I'm talking about here is, thank you, Kim, is that the risk is the possibility of it going down in value. Okay, that's the higher risk an investment is, the higher the possibility that it will go down in value. Now, there's the risk is both ways. It can go up or it can go down. Something that is very risky, that has a lot of risk, it can go up by a lot, and it also can go down by a lot. Okay, as opposed to stability essentially, it does not go down, or it can barely go down. Okay, so for example, an example of stability is a bank account, a high yield savings account, a place that will probably barely give you any interest, but it won't go down. So low risk it starts to behave a little bit more like it can move a little bit more to the upside, also can move a little bit down. Moderate risk is an investment like most 401k, target date funds, or index funds are moderate risk. And when I talk about high risk, that's really a speculation. When you buy individual stocks, when you buy crypto, when you buy the things that move a lot, that have a lot of risk, that I consider speculation, and not really. And the reason is they're on top of the pyramid. They're on top of the pyramid is because that's where I recommend to put the less amount of money possible, because there's just such huge amounts of risk. Yeah, you lost close to 8,000. There you go, Omar. So I'm not saying that you should put more in stability. No, that has no bearing with this. I'll explain a little bit more in the next slides. But your emergency fund, for example, should be in stability, should be in a bank account, should be something that has extremely low risk. So here is when I have a very good friend, Jessica. So Jessica had saved up for years for her wedding. He saved money for her dream wedding. She was ready to get married. So she got this big pot of money available for her wedding. Then comes her friend that tells her, hey, you have all this money, why don't you invest it? So what do you mean? Yeah, you can invest and you have more money, and you can even have an even better wedding. So this guy recommends him an investment. Of course, he sells investments. So he recommended investment to Jessica. And what happened next is a regret that is still 20 years later, Jessica still carries. What happened is that her wedding money was invested and she lost 30% of her money in a matter of weeks. So, because she took a lot of risk with money that should have not taken any risk. This was her wedding money. This was money that she was going to use pretty soon. So there was no need to take risks. Okay. So let's just put it all together. Let's put it all together. Really what I'm talking about is the importance of connecting your goals with the risks that you take with your money. So short-term goals should be invested in a stable type of investments, or should be held in a stable type of investments, like a regular bank account, a saving account, a certificate of deposit, aka CD. And then you'll say, well, but that's paying nothing. Exactly. You will get almost no interest, you will get almost no earnings, but that money is stable. That money is there for you when you need it. Okay, so many people forgot this last year with crypto. They said, well, I put all my emergency fund in crypto is doing great, until it didn't. So be very clear, be very mindful about your goals on the left hand, long-term, short-term, mid-term goals, and the risk that you take with that money. We go a little bit, if you're talking about investments that you're going to need in 5 years, for example. When I say short-term, it's generally money that you need in 5 years or less. Mid-term is money that you're going to need between 5 and 10 years. And long-term is money that you're going to need in more than 10 years. Okay, so low-risk investment bonds, maybe even if you want to do some alternatives like Kiva, where you lend money to when you do microcredits, that could be considered low risk. There's going to be some default. Some people are not going to pay back their loans, but because these are generally small loans, if you do many of them, if one or two don't pay, you can still receive the interest that the other loans pay you, and don't feel the pinch on those that don't. And then long-term goals, moderate risk, and here's where it goes: index funds, target date funds, a very diversified portfolio. Yes, depending on I mean, there are nuances on the moderate risk, right? That you can take more risk or less risk, but still is not a considered amount of risk. A stock portfolio in 2008, 2009, for example, I was fairly new in the industry, but I was there already. It was not uncommon for a diversified portfolio to lose 40%, 45% in 1 year. But 45% is better than 90%. It's better than 80%. That's what you get with diversification. So if you remember the risk pyramid, what I'm not showing here is speculation. So you may be thinking, well, what about individual stocks? What about crypto? What about all those investments? Well, those are in the highest end of the risk spectrum. I consider them a speculation. I don't recommend people to invest in individual stocks, even if it's your employer, in particular, if it's your employer. I recommend people to diversify away from employers as soon as you're able to. And I know you love your company. I know it's a great company. I know it has great track record. It has great history, whatever. But if you're in tech, you probably know what happened. You probably know what happened with BlackBerry about 15 years ago or 10 years ago. You probably know what happened with Cisco in the dot-com era, 99, 2000. Employees that were invested in Cisco stock have not recovered their investment yet, even 12 years later, 20 years later. Employees that have their stocks in BlackBerry, they're probably never going to recover their money. The stock went from 200 to $5. So it's highly speculative. There's a lot of speculation. And if you tell me, well, but my employer is different, well, I'm sure it's different, and I'm sure it's a great company. But still, you're taking too much risk when you have your employer stock, when you have investments in your employer stock, and when you have your job at that company. If that company goes bad, you may lose your job and you may lose your money. Okay. So there's a question here. When you refer to investing away from the company, you're referring to stock shares in the company or the employee 401k plans and offer. No, I'm talking about the stocks. I'm talking about owning stocks in your employer. If you get RSUs, if you get shares, certificates that you can buy at a lower price, those kind of things. The 401ks are protected, are separate assets from the company. If the company goes bankrupt, the 401k is still there. So yeah, it's a different story. So just be very mindful about individual stocks. Be very, very mindful about crypto, about the risks that it has, that it entails. And remember this, just remember the pyramid. Next time you're thinking about investing, remember to start with the why, to start with your values, to start with your goals. If it's money that you need soon, there's no need for you to take a lot of risk. The downside of it going down is worse than the benefits that you'd get for it going up. What about vested options from a company? Can we sell them? Each company has different Generally, when you exercise those options, those options become shares, then you can sell them. So that's an interesting discussion. Generally, the options, I don't think you can sell the options themselves. I'm not sure there's a market for them, but when they become shares, when you have the ability to convert them into shares, then you can diversify. And again, if it's a small portion of your portfolio, if your 401k is 50,000 and your options or your shares are only 2,000 or 3,000, that's fine. What I'm talking is don't over concentrate your risks in your individual stocks. So just be mindful of that. If you have a very large 401k and then you have a few options, well, that's fine. It won't break you if the company goes bankrupt. It will hurt, but it won't break you. But if you have all your 401k money, if your company stock, that could be a problem if the company goes down. Okay. Now, the other side is also true. The company may do even better than what they've done so far. Well, you have to live with the consequence of deciding to diversify away. Okay. The company may do great and you may lose out on those gains. Well, it is what it is, right? So my only suggestion, my recommendation, it is not don't hold company stock. What I'm saying is don't hold too much company stock. Don't make an overwhelming part of your wealth the company stock. So there's a nuance there. Okay, so I'm not saying don't invest at all. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying is don't invest too much. What is too much? It's up to each person. If it's to each particular situation. Generally, I say don't invest more than 10% of your wealth in a particular company or a particular instrument. You can invest 100% of your wealth in a diversified portfolio. That's perfectly fine because you're investing in thousands of stocks. But if you're investing all your money in one stock, that's a lot of risk. Okay. So that's all I have for today. So let's open it up for questions and let's go from there. You consider, is that okay, Alexis?
Hey, Miguel, I'm going to actually scroll up because there was a couple of questions coming in.
Absolutely.
So I'll just start like saying it to you, and so you don't have to like go through the reading and content. So I'll help you out here. The first one was from R. Walker, and I think this individual just wanted to confirm. So you said if you leave a company and have a 401k, the best thing to do is to transfer into an IRA.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. There are some factors you need to evaluate. If the 401k is great, it's a good 401k with low costs, you can leave it there. You can leave it as your 401k, but I've seen it happening. So don't say that that's impossible. I've seen it happening. People sometimes forget that they had a 401k at a former employer, and people forget. So if you are mindful, if you think that you won't forget, well, you can leave it there. But I've seen people with the most I've seen, I think it's 7 401ks of 7 different employers, and then putting them all together to create a plan. It's more challenging. It's not impossible. It's more challenging. So really, you have the option of leaving it there. Some employers, some 401ks will kick you out if you have less than 5,000. We'll send you a letter. We'll contact you to tell you, hey, take your money. But if you have more than that, you can leave it there and no issues will happen. If you have less than 1,000, they can actually send you a check. You don't request it yourself, and that will create some taxes for you. So it depends. The best answer is it depends. Some people can leave it there. Some people can cash out. Some people, yeah. Now, really, something to consider. If you lose your job and you have no money and you have no job and you have no employment prospects in the near future, well, you may need to cash out a little bit, and you may need to pay taxes, and you may need to pay the penalty. But that's something that you need to decide mindfully. All right.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And he's right. I've definitely, I worked in a previous company. I definitely forgot I had a 401k. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. It does happen, like he said. The next question is from Nicole Amaro. Which is better to invest in, a 401k or a Roth IRA? And do you recommend investing in a high yield savings account? I think you actually touched on the high yield, but the first one is it better to invest in a 401 or a Roth IRA?
Well, yeah, I mean, if your employer offers a match, I would always say invest in the 401k at least to get the match. And really, if you're able to put away more than what the Roth IRA allows, you can always do both. Now, there's the thing: if you, there are income limits into how much you can put into a Roth IRA and when, and there's some additional. If you make too much money for the IRS, if you're single, and I believe the limit is around 100,000. If you're single and you make more than 100,000, you cannot contribute to a Roth IRA directly. You have to do what it's called a backdoor Roth IRA, which is a little bit more challenging. We can discuss it individually if you want to. But if you make less than 100,000, you can contribute to a Roth IRA directly, no problems. But if you can contribute more than the maximum that the Roth IRA allows, you can always go back to your 401k. So it really depends on what you're trying to achieve, where you are, your income, etc. But yeah, don't leave the match aside. It's free money.
Amazing, thank you. Do you recommend investing in a high yield savings account?
Yes, I do, but be sure that they're US dollar based savings accounts. Now with the crypto craziness, some crypto brokers started saying invest in a high yield crypto. That's not high yield, that's not bank, it's highly risky. We've seen it, a few brokers have already went bankrupt, and people are having a lot of trouble trying to get their crypto out of there. If we're talking a regular bank high yield savings account, yes, it can be great for short-term goals, even for mid-term goals or emergency funds. There can be very useful, yes.
Awesome. Do you consider money market accounts stable?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. What are the best types of stocks to invest in?
What are what, I'm sorry?
The best of stocks to invest in, yeah.
That's a very good question, Nicole. So my response to you is going to be, it's not really about the stocks. It's not about, so because I could tell you just buy tech stocks or just like, no. What I'm going to tell you is it's not about the individual stocks. It's about buying the whole market. So there are mutual funds, and there are index funds, and there are options in 401k plans where you are able to buy pretty much all of the stocks available in the market. So all of a sudden your portfolio has 10,000 stocks in the US and internationally. So those are the best type of funds, in my opinion, where you buy them all. You're not trying to find the next Google. You're not trying to find the next Google or the next Amazon or the next whatever. You're buying them all. So I think that's very useful, a very low cost also way to diversify a portfolio. And essentially you set it and forget it. You set that fund and you forget about it.
Thank you for that. We have a question from Jennifer Gonzalez. What is your opinion on robo-advisors such as Wealthfront and Betterment?
I think they have a place in the market. Some people can really benefit from them, especially if they've never had an advisor before, or they are trying to do starting out on their wealth, on their wealth creation process. I think they definitely have a place in the market. There's a point where they're not enough, when you really need to have an advisor, and obviously conflict of interest disclosure, I'm an advisor myself. So, but if you're starting out, if you're comfortable with a machine dealing with your financial decisions, that's perfectly fine. And if you don't have very complex needs, they can be great. They're certainly better than doing it alone, because I mean, if you are someone that needs some help, some assistance, some rebalancing, I think some other tools that you cannot do yourself, I think Wealthfront at Betterment can be very useful, and they certainly have a place in the market.
Awesome. Where or who do you go to put money into bonds and for a diversified portfolio?
That's a great question. So you can build a diversified portfolio yourself through a target date fund in Fidelity, for example, or in Vanguard, or in a TD Ameritrade, or in Schwab. You can just search for them and you can buy one. So if it's retirement money, essentially the simplest way to invest is you think about the year you think you're going to retire. Let's say it's 2060. And you buy the fund that most closely relates to that year. So a target retirement 2060 fund, and you put money into it every month or every year, every 6 months or whatever, and then you forget about it. So you can do it at any of those institutions. Bonds, if you're interested in bonds, you can buy them in many cases directly through the US Treasury. The website is treasurydirect.gov. treasurydirect.gov. You can buy government bonds there, super low risk. You can buy up to 30-year bonds there. So you can do that, no problem. And you can buy bond mutual funds as well. But I believe the more diversified approach would be through a target retirement date fund. I hope I answered your question, Jorge. What else? Let's see.
The next one is from Pedro. When do you suggest to realize your vested shares in your employer stock, aka all RSUs have vested after 4 years? I want to buy a house. Would it be smart to cash out?
Well, you need to be mindful of the tax consequences. So you're very clear about what you want to do with that money. You need to be very clear about what the tax impact of exercising those options would be. So buying a house is definitely a short-term thing, sounds like, for you. So if you know you're going to buy the house the next year, probably taking the risk is not worth it. To continue to take the risk is not worth it, but you have to be very mindful that it's probably going to create you taxes. So you need to be mindful of what that tax impact going to look like, because maybe you're counting on the 100,000 that you're going to get, but surprise, of those 100,000, 25 are going to be taxes, or 30,000 are going to be taxes. So my suggestion is to get a tax advisor or a financial advisor to help you calculate those numbers for you, so that you don't get the surprise hit when you have to pay those taxes when exercising those stocks. But if you're trying to buy that house, just I will try to cash out as soon as possible, but doing it in a mindful way, taking in account the potential taxes that you're going to incur.
Awesome, thank you. Kelly Garcia has a follow-up to Pedro's question. I take advantage of my company's ESPP plan and buy discounted stock in bulk twice a year. How long should I wait to cash out my ESPP and invest in other assets like real estate? And please note that her company's stock has grown 304% in the past 5 years alone.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, so there you go. So if you already have that stock, if you have already bought some of that stock, again, just be mindful of the tax consequences. Essentially, you buy at a discount and you're able to sell them the next day if you want to, if the employer allows it. So just be mindful. Some companies have restrictions into how soon you can sell those shares. Some don't. So just be sure you understand those rules that the employer has. And then again, talk with a tax advisor or financial advisor to make sure you understand the tax consequences and tax impact. So even if you sell today, the taxes won't be due until next year, April or October, depending if you do an extension. So, but it's money that you need to set aside for those taxes. Yeah. So here's some resources. And if there are more questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I don't know if any of you were fans of Vicente Fernandez, but what he used to say is, I'm going to keep singing until you tell me to keep singing. So don't worry. If you have more questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
There is another question. So, which is actually, I think, a really good question. Would you recommend investing now with the news of an upcoming recession?
That's a very good question, Jennifer. So here's the thing. Let's go back to the pyramid of risk. When you're talking about investing, we're talking about really generally the long term. So you're investing for the next 10 years, you're investing for the next 20 years, you're investing for the next 30 years. So if there's a recession, the market's already down 20%. Some areas of the market, some stocks are down 70% or more. So essentially what you will be doing is you're buying cheap. Now, are they going to go cheaper? I have no idea. Nobody knows really. But if you're investing for the long term, really that shouldn't matter, because when you're investing for the long term, you're betting that the future, especially if you're doing a diversified portfolio, if you're investing in a diversified portfolio, a highly diversified portfolio, at the end of the day, what you're investing in is you're betting on the future of humanity. Now, it sounds corny, but you think about it. When you invest in a diversified portfolio, you're investing in, say, 10,000 companies. You're betting that those 10,000 companies are going to be better in 20 years. Just look back 20 years. How did TVs look like 20 years ago? What was the mileage on cars 20 years ago? How were computers 20 years ago? How was the price of milk 20 years ago? How many products that we take for granted today did not exist 20 years ago? So that's going to happen in the next 20 years as well. So when you're investing, you're betting on the future of the world, that the world is going to be better than where it is right now. So would I recommend investing with the news of an upcoming recession? Yes, I absolutely would. With a caveat that, again, we're talking about long term. We're talking about the next 20 years. If it's money that you're going to need in less than 10 years, then you invest in low risk stuff. If it's money that you're going to need in less than 5 years, then you invest in stability, which really you're not investing, you're saving. Okay, so have that clarity about where it is that you're trying to invest, that you're trying to achieve, and then that should lead you how much risk you take. Okay, then they're asking what's the name author of the book I recommended. So the book is called I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And the author is Ramit Sethi. Now, I don't agree with everything he says. Sometimes he says some very crazy stuff, but I generally agree with him. I really like what he says. So, yeah. Then some other things, if you want to find my podcast, my newsletter, etc., there's my Linktree. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can shoot me an email, ask me any questions. You can find a fee only fiduciary advisors, which is really the only type of advisor I recommend. I'm a member of those two organizations, but if for some reason you don't like me or you don't want to talk with me, that's perfectly fine. You can find an advisor in either two of these places, napfa.org or xyplanningnetwork.com. Anybody else has any other questions? And I'm happy to answer them.
We do have 4 minutes left. I don't want to take anyone else's time, and I do want to be mindful of time. So if you want to squeeze in one last question, please feel free. But I really want to thank you ultimately, Miguel. You are such an asset to this community, and super blessed to be in your presence and know about your knowledge and education. And I've never even thought about the multi-account approach. So I might just open up like 2 or 3 savings accounts. And
yeah, you can go to capital1.com. You can even open 10 accounts. Okay. You can set automatic investment. They won't charge you any fees. So you can set $5 to one account, $25 to another, 50 to another, no problem.
I can like nickname my accounts, right? Because I feel like I'm a visual person, so I need like, okay, like wedding savings and stuff like that. So
yes,
okay, cool. Well, thank you again. And if there's no more questions, that's all right. We're always. Can you provide your Linktree? Yes.
Yeah. So linktr.ee/Miguel Gomez. Let me put in here.
And just so, just in case anyone needs to refer back to this, this will be uploaded onto YouTube, and I will also send out an email to you all as well, thanking you for coming along, but also just so you have the recording at hand, because this was amazing. So appreciate you all for coming. And anytime, Nicole, and thank you everyone for attending. We really appreciate you being here and taking time out of your day. And Miguel, I'll talk to you very shortly. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Nicole, for your comments. Thank you, Jorge. Thank you, Omar. Thank you, Pedro. Thank you, everyone. It's very, very, I feel great to hear your comments. So thank you.
Nicole, yeah, we'll definitely do more of these sessions, whether they're a Zoom call open to the public or maybe doing something more intimate, like if you have Slack, if you're part of our Slack community, doing like little, Money Mondays, little huddles that we can talk about or whatever for like 20, 30 minutes. That could work out. So definitely would love to do more sessions in the future. So yeah. So with that being said, I hope everyone has an amazing Wednesday. And if you have any questions, please feel free. Miguel's awesome. He's always open to conversation. And if you need anything from me, I'm on Slack, LinkedIn, Alexis does too. So we will all see you soon. Have a wonderful day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Bye, Miguel. Thank you so much.
You're
You're the best.
Thank you.